Whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Questions? We don't need any. Okay.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you guys for coming today. This is the virtual town hall for the street maintenance bond election that's occurring on April 6th, which is next Tuesday. And this is just a chance for the public to hear the presentation of, what's on the ballot and how we got to choosing the projects. And this is an ongoing program, so you can get a little update on how that has been progressing. And after we hear a presentation from our Public Works Director, Sean O'Leary, we'll take public questions both here in the Zoom webinar and on our YouTube channel. So, Sean, if you'll take it away.
Thank you, Annalise. If I can get my screen to show up here.
Beautiful family.
Are you seeing that full screen?
Now we've got your presentation here.
Thank you. Okay, I appreciate the chance to share some information. I've been giving this around Norman the last few weeks, and I'm happy to share just a few slides here. Also want to mention our website is outstanding. So if you want to go back and drill down and get some more information or have time to really think about it, I'm going to move fairly quickly through this, but there's just a ton of great information on the website. So also had some folks recently say, just give me the straight scoop. So I'm going to start with an overview here, and then we'll drill down into some of the details. So as Annalise said, this is a special election a week from today, so April 6th. It is a no new tax proposal. This is an ad valorem property tax program that has existed for actually 15 years. A vote for this program will not increase those property taxes. They will stay the same as they are today. This is a 5-year program, so that would be a short-term program in our world. And this will be the 4th one of these that we have brought to the voters. I'll talk more about that here in a minute, but it's a short-term program that I think works very well for street maintenance, kind of short-term maintenance projects. The other thing I tell people is that if for some reason you are unhappy with this program, in 5 years you can vote no again. That's not been the case. The opposite has been the case. People in Norman have voted more for this program every 5 years. This is basic street maintenance in neighborhood. This is the streets where we live. This isn't the busy streets, Robinson Street or Lindsay or Flood and that sort of thing. These are the neighborhood streets where we live and conduct our family business. The ballot ordinance for this program contains the list of streets. So if you want to really drill down and find out where your money is going, we have a list. We tell you exactly which streets we're doing, what year we're doing them, and where every dollar is going. The streets are located everywhere in Norman, so there's really no place. I'll show you a map here in a minute of that, but there's no place left out in our city limits. And then I will talk briefly about the documented results. This program really, really works. I can't think of any better way to describe why we need the additional funding than to show you a map of Norman. We are a very large city, 190 square miles. Many citizens don't know that. Our city limits go out to the east side of Lake Thunderbird. And so that decision goes back about 5 decades, back into the 60s. But when we annexed that area, we also annexed hundreds of additional miles of streets. And so if you look at most cities around the country with a population of 125,000, you're going to find that they're sitting on about 35 square miles, and they have about 300 or 400 miles of streets. Norman sits on 190 square miles, and we have 800 miles of streets. And that's really the problem. It was a problem for decades. And this street maintenance bond program kind of came out of that kind of realization back in the late 1990s, early 2000s. And it's been very successful in kind of filling that gap of funding. So that first program was voted on in 2005. It was about $11 million street maintenance bond issue, 54% voter approval rating. And we then set out on what I think was a very successful 5-year program. Delivered on our promises, did every street we said we're going to do, and had some surplus funds left over. Went back to the voters in 2010, another 5-year program, very similar to the previous one. And again, with each 5 years, the valuation in property tax grows, and therefore we're able to generate more funds. So 19 million this time, and about a 65% voter approval rating. And so what that says to me or to us here is that our voters are noticing the program, they like the program, they appreciate seeing street maintenance in their neighborhoods. And so it becomes more popular every 5 years. Same thing occurred in 2016 with the current 5-year program that will end in the end of June of this year, 2021. It was a $25 million bond issue, about a 67% voter approval rating. And again, we will finish all of those projects by June of this year. So that brings us to the current proposal. The 2021-2026 street maintenance bond program is projected to be a $27 million bond issue. Every dollar of those bonds will go into street maintenance. Left side of the screen is a kind of results of a survey we did several years ago during our transportation master planning process. And we basically asked the citizens, if you had $100, where would you spend it on transportation? What's important to you? And naturally, sidewalks and bus service and bike paths and all that sort of thing were popular in Norman. But bottom line, what people have told us over and over again is that they want us to take care of what we have. Take care of your existing streets first, and then do everything secondary to that. And that's really what this program does. The street maintenance bond program is maintaining existing streets in neighborhoods. Excuse me. So some key elements of the program. This is a neighborhood street program. It's pretty balanced, we think. We have asphalt streets, we have concrete streets, we have rural roads, and we've tried to blend the program to address all of those. In fact, about 60% of our streets are asphalt. So you'll see a pretty robust asphalt, urban asphalt, and rural asphalt element of this program. We're adding some preventive maintenance techniques this time to try to get us out ahead of the street condition before they start to deteriorate. And so we're making great progress in that area. Again, there's a specific list of the streets. It's in our ballot ordinance and it's on our website. So check that out if you want to know where the streets or where the dollars are going. Again, I'll talk a minute about the documented results. And I want to highlight our partnership with Cleveland County. They're a great partner. In the rural road portion of the program, the county employees combine with the city employees, and we use our city and county owned equipment to do these road projects. And by doing that in-house, we're able to do the project for about 50% of what it would cost to go to a contract program. And so again, we're able to, or think of it differently, we're able to do about twice as much in the rural road area than we would if we were using contracts. Lots of numbers here. I won't dwell too much on this. This is a summary of all the last 3 programs and then the proposed program on this ballot. The key takeaways here for me are that we're proposing to do 152 miles of street maintenance. That is tremendous. It is among the highest in our programs, and it just kind of gives you a sense of how much ground we cover with this program. So 152 miles out of the 800-mile network in the city. So you will see us and it would be odd not to be in your neighborhood or near your neighborhood with this program over the next 5 years. So at $27 million bond program, no new taxes. This is a continuation of the same property tax mill levy. You can see where the numbers are going in terms of those categories. I want to highlight that we dedicate 15% to rural road rehabilitation. A lot of that goes into East Norman, Ward 5 primarily, and that's been a mainstay of the program. We know that we have lots of rural roads, particularly in the east, and they needed to catch up. We needed to really do some work there. And in fact, I believe we have, between this program and our capital program and a really excellent CDBG program a couple of years ago, we are seeing great improvements in rural East Norman on our road miles. In fact, we paved the last unpaved road in rural East Norman last year. So great progress there. This is not a drainage stormwater program, but we will not leave a neighborhood with any drainage issues. So there's some minor drainage improvements, driveway culverts, that sort of thing that get replaced with each of these projects. I won't dwell here much, but we get the question, how do you pick these streets? Is that O'Leary picking his favorite streets in his neighborhood, or is that the mayor pressuring us to do certain streets? That none of that happens, I promise you. This is a very objective and data-driven program. We use our pavement management system that was developed back in the also late 90s, early 2000s. And we literally go out every year and evaluate the condition of our streets. We know at any given moment the condition of every street, every block in Norman, and then we use that data to pick the right street for this program. Here's an illustration of what that looks like in terms of numbers. So think of a grading scale 0 to 100. If you're an 85 street, then you're a really good street. That doesn't need much attention. But if you're a 50 or a 60, you need some maintenance. And so that's how we pick our streets. We go down into the 40s and 50s and 60s. And our goal is to get up around the 70s, to get a C grade. Someday we'd like to get a B grade if we can keep this program going. I'll point out here on this slide that this year, the summary of that analysis now indicates that our average condition of streets in Norman is a 75. When we started this program back in the early 2000s, we were dreaming, frankly, hoping for a 72, that if we could ever just reach a 72 citywide, that we were really going to make an impact. And so the notion that we've gotten to the 75 really speaks to the effectiveness of this program. It's working. It's working everywhere. And again, it's very gradual. If we stop doing it, that 75 will diminish pretty quickly. If we keep doing it, that 75 might become a 76 or a 77, but it's not a dramatic increase each year. It's just the kind of basic maintenance you do to your street system, sort of like changing the oil in your car. You've got to keep that vehicle maintained, or else it will start to have lots of big problems. The same is true with street maintenance. So here is the map of every street that we're proposing in this program. It's kind of hard to read here, but again, check out our website. There's an interactive map there. And if you go on that website, you can actually point and click at any of these colored lines, and it'll tell you exactly what the project is, how much we're going to spend, what year it's going to be done, and that sort of thing. So it's really easy to follow online. I mentioned that there is a very prescriptive list. Every street that we're proposing to address is there. Here's an example of that list in the urban concrete category, and urban asphalt and rural roads and reconstruction and preventive maintenance. So again, quick summary again here, citywide election next Tuesday, so a week from today. No new taxes. This is a continuation of the ad valorem property tax that has existed that we've been paying now for 15 years for this program. It is a 5-year short-term program, which kind of matches the kind of work that we're doing. This is short-term street maintenance. This is not widening roads. This is not adding sidewalks or bike lanes. This is basic maintenance of existing streets. Again, that ballot ordinance has a list of every street, and we have maps online that you can check out exactly where we're proposing to put these dollars. And again, in the current program, for instance, I can show you the map and the list of projects completed. And we will have completed every street that we promised in that program. We've done that for 3 consecutive programs. And then with each of those programs, we come in under budget and a little ahead of schedule. And council has put those surplus dollars right back into more street maintenance on more streets. And so really a wonderful program, and all of these dollars have gone into that basic function of street maintenance throughout Norman. And again, as I mentioned, we have really documented results. This program is really working. I hope we can continue to do it for another 5 years. So thank you. We'll stop there and take any questions.
Great. So we don't have any questions in our chat yet. If anybody has questions, just drop them in either here or on our YouTube feed and we'll get them answered. I'll go ahead and ask a couple questions that we've been getting from the public in general in the meantime. First, so we just had a vote. It seems like we just had a vote on a something to do with streets and transportation bond issue. Can you explain how this differs from that program?
You bet, Arlise. Yeah, that's a point of confusion, and that's probably a good thing that we've actually had some other transportation bond issues in Norman that people are confusing with this program. So the most recent one was in 2019, April 2019, was a transportation bond issue, 19 major, big transportation projects. These are the kinds of projects that involve the widening of roads. We just finished one on 24th Avenue East, which is an example of a little 2-lane arterial that gets widened to 4 and 5 lanes. We had sidewalks, that sort of thing. That's what that program is. It is a very long-term 20-year program. It is very large. That one was $139 million total investment of dollars. That one combines federal funding, which this one doesn't either. And so sort of, I think of it as the capital T versus the little t. Capital T in transportation goes to these big widened corridor projects. The little t is in transportation maintenance. And that's what this program is. This is a basic maintenance of existing streets. We are not widening. We are not adding other infrastructure. We are not waiting for federal funding matches. Every dollar goes into the streets. And if this is approved, we begin spending these dollars and doing these projects in fiscal year 22, which is July of this year.
Excellent, thank you. Anytime we're talking about bonds or, voting on spending additional monies, I think the question always comes up, how does this impact my tax rate? Anthony, I think this is probably a question for you, but can you tell us where Norman stands in terms of other cities' property taxes?
For our comparable cities, Norman is at the low end, about the bottom third, if you will. For example, Oklahoma City and Tulsa have a much higher property tax burden for the city. Moore has a higher property tax burden. Edmond has a lower property tax burden. So we're in the lower third. And again, I would point out that all cities in Oklahoma, the property tax burden is relatively low compared to any other state in the United States, because Oklahoma is the only state in the United States that cities don't get property tax for operations. Cities in Oklahoma only can use property tax for general obligation bond repayment. And so just generally speaking, property taxes in Oklahoma are extremely low compared to any other state. And Norman is relatively low compared to other cities in Oklahoma.
Excellent. And I know that we have the list that you provided of where we rank compared to other cities in Oklahoma and just comparable cities on our website at normanoka.gov/election. And so you can visit that. We'll drop that in the chat. It looks like we have a couple new people joining, so I will just reiterate that if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat. Right now, we're just going through some commonly asked questions. I think one that always comes up on our bond elections is, or any election that we have, is how do we know that what we're voting on is going to get done? And when when I'm going to the ballot and I see just a small thing, you know, the ballot question, how does that differ from the ordinance and what's being voted on?
I'm happy to take that. We're required by law to limit the size of the question that we put on the ballot to 250 words. So we cannot, or rather 150 words, we cannot include all of the streets within that ballot proposition. So what we do is we adopt an ordinance along with the proposition, and that ordinance is linked on our website. It lists every single project that we will do with this money. And because we have tied it to this proposition, we have to do those projects. If we, for some reason, have, you know, projects come under budget, we can do similar projects with any extra funds, but we have to get all these projects that are listed done with these funds.
And we do have a list of those again on our website under the ordinance. So you can go view those, and on our map as well, which is probably an easier way to look at them. So Sean, I do have a follow-up question. You mentioned that, you know, we've come in under budget on some of these things. Do we spend that excess funding on additional street maintenance?
Yeah, we do. And again, with each one, they're all a little bit different and the numbers are different. The economy is different, all that sort of thing. It was varied over those 15 years, but each one of them has come in under budget in the range of 5 to 10% at least. And so we take that finding back to City Council, and we basically ask that question, what would you like to do with it? Generally, we believe the language in the ballot requires us to use it for street maintenance, but that could be that could be many kinds of street maintenance. We've already at that point completed all of the streets in that particular ballot, so the council would have some latitude, but consistently over the 3 previous programs, council has directed staff to go back and do more of the same, go back into the neighborhoods that were not included for whatever reason, and just add more mileage to the basic neighborhood street maintenance. And there's always more to do. So we always have great candidates, and that's exactly what we've done. So imagine taking, in this case, probably a couple $1 million and putting it back into 3 or 4 or 5 neighborhoods that had not planned on seeing maintenance. And by doing that, we're also getting ahead of the next program, so we can save the money in a future program by doing it with this one. So it's just been a great program. And yes, council has been, different councils, of course, over those years have been very consistent supporters of basic street maintenance and of this program.
Annalise, just to add to that, the mechanism, that pavement management software system that Mr. O'Leary described, it provides an objective criteria by which those next bundles of streets are brought forward. So it gives everybody confidence in knowing that when we come in under budget on a project, to go back to that objective source. We love to avoid subjectivity when we can in questions like this because the data speaks for itself. So always happy to highlight that pavement management system. It's pretty elaborate in terms of all the city streets listed and graded and how they are holding up over time. And over time, the list doesn't just remain stagnant and we roll from top to bottom. The list changes over time because road conditions change over time based on weather conditions and traffic volumes, and how often a street may have to get cut for a underground water line or sewer line or storm drain line project. So that list is constantly refreshed and made current so that we make sure we're getting the best bang for the taxpayer's dollar in terms of keeping those roads in service for as long as possible before maintenance is required. And when maintenance is required, the goal is to make sure the life of the street is extended so we don't have to spend money on major reconstructions. It's always cheaper to pay for those maintenance projects than it is to rebuild a complete street.
Excellent. I think I just have, I'll ask one more question that we get commonly. We're last chance for people to drop questions in if you have any, otherwise we'll leave this up. So last question is, if we don't if this doesn't pass, where do we get funding for street maintenance, and what does that look like in terms of how much progress we can make?
That's a great question, Lisa. Again, you think about, and Anthony might weigh in here too, but you think about street maintenance here, I think of it in really three categories of spending. We have our general fund, which essentially pays for a staff of employees in our street division. They are patching potholes on a daily basis. They are doing street sweeping, and they are actually mowing. We spend a lot of our energy mowing rights of way throughout the city during the mowing season and so on. So those folks are doing kind of the day-to-day street maintenance. We do have a paving crew that does some work in the rural areas, which is a major portion of that. So that's sort of that source of funding, that day-to-day basic maintenance. And then we have a capital program that is a portion of our sales tax that goes into lots of capital projects in the city. And there's about $2 million a year that goes into street maintenance. And we use that for the same kind of work, contract street maintenance throughout the city. A lot of that goes into those arterial streets, those busy multi-lane roads. And then there is this bond program, which currently is about $5 million a year in neighborhood street maintenance. So if this does not pass, I think our neighborhood street maintenance program just went to zero. Not that we won't do our best to try to stretch those other two sources, but the street maintenance bond program, as I said early on in my presentation, makes up about 2/3 of our actual real maintenance dollars going into streets. And so that would end just immediately on July 1st. And I think, from a standpoint of the citizens, it would be a very gradual thing. This is not the sky falling in July. That wouldn't happen. The streets would remain open and so on. But over the course of the next year or two or three or five, we will see it. We will see the diminishment of that maintenance. And again, I use the analogy of maintaining your car. If you stop changing your oil, about 20,000 miles from now, that engine would freeze up and crash, and you'd have a $5,000 engine replacement project. The same thing with street maintenance. It's not an overnight problem. You've got to keep up with it every day, every year. And if you do that, your streets are going to be great and safe and comfortable, and your property values are going to stay where they need to be in our neighborhoods. So again, this is such an important part of our programs. I mentioned early on in the presentation, it was developed over decades. We knew we had a problem back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and this program, which was created before my time, was a wonderful collaborative effort and creative idea from council and staff and citizens to bridge that gap. How do we get our streets better maintained? And this program has done it now for 15 years, and it's really in our interest to keep doing it.
Excellent. Anthony, did you have anything to add to that?
No, just that, as Sean says, it's been very scientific and very deliberate, starting with the original program back in 2005, which was really learning from the sewer maintenance rate that was put in place in 2001. The same sort of thing as just making sure that you're not falling further behind and in identifying a new source of revenue to maintain the streets at a higher level. And when Sean says that scientifically measured pavement management system has taken us from 62 to 75, that's very scientific. And again, what you will see is bad road surfaces and people complaining that the streets are normal and are really bad, that sort of thing. But you gradually get better if you have this fixed source of revenue, and that's what we have seen. The program has done what the program said it would do.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm not seeing any questions from any of our sources here, so I'll just open it up. Is there anything else anybody would like to add?
I'll jump in if I may. I can't encourage residents enough to vote yes. This is not a tax increase. the benefits you see on the roads that you drive every day in your neighborhood. Staff has once again done an unbiased job of finding needed improvements in every ward throughout Norman. We've delivered on it consistently, time and time again, and it gets more popular each time that we do it because we are so consistent. And I think that it's crucial, again, to keep this rate locked in so we don't see our taxes increase, because while this may not be like the sexiest part of government, it's definitely one of the most important things that we do, and very basic in terms of quality of life. And so I think this is a hands down best thing for our community. It's not very often we get to continue to invest in ourselves without seeing tax increases. So I encourage everyone to get out on April 6th and vote yes, so we can continue to have some of the best streets in Oklahoma as our ratings continue to grow up. It's a quality of life, but then it's also, I think, what makes Norman attractive place to live and do business. So please vote yes on April 6th.
Excellent. Thank you, Mayor. Is there anything else that anybody would like to add before we close this out? Okay, well, thank you all for attending today. This will be up on our YouTube, and we'll share it on Facebook as well for you to watch later. We'll also be doing this again on Monday, April 5th, so you can get your last minute questions in. It'll be at 2 p.m. Thank you guys, and have a great evening.